Hey everybody, it is Thursday. That means it's time for your Thursday thought, and I just wanted to talk to you today about earnest money. Came to my attention recently that was talking with somebody, and I started talking about earnest money, and they're like, "Hey, what's earnest money?" So I thought if one person didn't know, there's probably other people that don't know. And earnest money is money that a buyer will give to the title company or maybe a real estate office or essentially to the seller, although the seller doesn't get their hands on it. But it's money that's put up to show that they're earnest about purchasing the property. And that money essentially sits most often at the title or escrow office or with the listing brokerage firm. It sits there until the day of closing, and that money gets applied to the amount that the buyer needs to close the deal. So the down payment and all of the basic closing fees, that money is applied to that number that the buyer needs. Okay. So a couple things about earnest money is that you give it to title or escrow, and they hold on to it until closing. But what if the deal doesn't close? Do you get that money back? And the answer is in most cases, yes. In most cases, if as long as you don't miss your deadlines, as long as you perform according to what you said you would do in the contract, you will get that earnest money back if the deal does not go through. So let me give you a couple of examples of how you get your money back, or in scenarios where you would, and then I'll let you know how you may not get that money back. Probably the two things that kill deals the most in my estimation and my experience are basically inspection and condition items of the house, and then two, lending or finance terms of that house. And so when we write a contract, if I'm representing the buyer, there's going to be some deadlines in there, and one of those is going to be basically an inspection inspection objection deadline. And I can't object to the condition of the house prior to us closing, somewhere in the middle of the contract there. And if the house is unsatisfactory to my buyer, we can if the condition of the house is unsatisfactory to my buyer, we can terminate the deal based on condition, and we file something called an earnest money release. So we get that money back, the deal will be over, we terminate, and that's that. The other one that both deals is the financing. And so that's usually set out maybe about a week before closing or something along those lines. And if there's anything that comes up to the loan that we're not able to get the loan that you thought you were going to get, or was going to cost more, or the interest rate, whatever it is, basically at the buyer's sole objection, they can, if they don't like the terms of the loan, they can again file a notice to terminate and an earnest money release to get that earnest money back prior to that deadline. There's also an appraisal objection, and there's also a few other things that you can terminate the contract based on, and then also you can file for earnest money as long as you have performed like you said you were going to do via the contract, and that you haven't missed all of your deadlines or any of your deadlines. So that is kind of how earnest money works. So basically you put it out there, it's waiting for you. As long as you perform and stay with your deadlines, you have the option to terminate based on these items, and have the option to ask for that earnest money back. When do you not get the earnest money back? That's a good question. Basically, if you've blown past all of those dates that I just mentioned, you didn't object to any of the condition of the appraisal or anything in your days before closing, and you just want to terminate because you get like buyer's remorse or buyer's regret or whatever it is, you just want to terminate. And you've missed all of your options and deadlines to terminate, you're not going to get your earnest money back in most of those scenarios. We can still, of course, always file the earnest money release, but the seller has a right at that point to keep that earnest money, because put yourself in the seller's shoes for a moment. They've taken the house off of the market for 25, 30, 40 days, however long you've been under contract. They've probably done some repairs to the property that you've asked them to do in the inspection process, in the objection and the resolution process, and so they're kind of stuck holding the bag in those scenarios. So that would be a scenario, and probably the most common scenario, why you would not get your earnest money back. Of course, there are always some crazy things that happen, but basically when you blow through all of those deadlines and you don't file the appropriate paperwork, you may be at risk for losing your earnest money. So again, simply put, earnest money is just money that you're putting up to giving the title to escrow, showing that you're serious about purchasing the property. I've never lost a client's earnest money, although I have heard of it happening. But basically, as long as you stay within your deadlines, you can file a notice to terminate, and Earnest Money release to get that money back. And of course, if you blow past all of those and you leave the seller holding the bag, they're going to keep that Earnest Money as their compensation for the deal not going through and you not performing like you said you would according to the contract. So it's kind of long, but I hope it helped. Thank you. See you next week for the next week's Thursday Thought.